first or second year here at BYU, came into my office and said, I want to propose a project of creating a dictionary for Kiribati. I didn't even know what he was talking about. I was like, dictionary, what does this guy want to do? James sat down with me, and right away I realized what a serious person he is. Very hardworking, very dedicated, which he did. He went off on his field study and worked on a dictionary. Then I had the pleasure of working with him a year or two later with the Fiji Distance Learning program, which was his creation. He pushed it through, got through all the red tape at BYU, and hopefully he'll tell us more about it. But he and a group of students out of our office ended up going to Fiji and did a very nice thing working with students there. Distance learning kind of a thing where this opportunity allowed for them to then transition into college. James has had a lot of international experience, and so I'm not going to even try to begin talking about. I probably should mention that he worked with the Uganda project, with the Heights, and was the facilitator there, stationed there, I think, multiple times. Got his master's degree here at BYU in education, went on then to UCLA, and where he got his PhD. We're just really, really pleased that he would come back and spend some time with us as one of our alumni, and we welcome you here and we welcome him. And we'll turn the time over to James Jacob now.
Thank you, Dave, and also Ashley. Appreciate the warm welcome. And it brings back a lot of reflections and memories of the times when we first met. Also, I am excited to see some other close friends. Namely Carol Ward, Professor Ward, who is a mentor to me for many years, and also a colleague now in different writing initiatives that we've had, and Yodit Sullivan, likewise. Also, Director Lynn Elliot, appreciate all of your support and this opportunity. One of the reasons I accepted at this very busy time of our semester to come back to Brigham Young University is because of the topic that Dave extended to me to come and speak about the importance of international programs, and in particular the field studies portion. I have had some experience with the field studies program here. It originated in 1994 and 95, and I wanted to get involved with something international. I served my mission in the Fiji Suva mission, and two of those countries in that mission, Fiji and Kiribati, is where I served my mission. And Dave is right. This kind of started my particular interests, and I come back and started with the interest of how can I return to a place that I love, and really piqued my interests in perhaps a career in international. I wasn't sure at the time which type of degree I wanted to focus on. I thought perhaps I would become a religious professor and focus on church history and different aspects that go with that. But then things shifted in my chain, or at least in my thoughts, towards more development and education as a focus. So a lot of the experiences I'll share with you today, I would like it to be targeted so that you can see my path that I went through and some of the reflections that I have on those experiences. But also, if you have any questions, I would welcome them, and I would be happy to address any of them if you are more interested in talking about them. But I should start here with the BYU International Field Studies, which originated with two programs, and it had the acronym IFSI, International Field Studies and Internships. Dave was the originator of this particular organizational structure, and it was different than the traditional study abroad programs, if you will, of going with a large group to Europe was the traditional target, nothing against the traditional model. But this gave an alternative focus, one that primarily targeted 3 areas, and this is beginning with research, a heavy research emphasis. Second, service learning opportunities. And then the final, you can see here, is professional development opportunities, ones that you could participate in that are directly related to whatever major you may have. This was attractive to me at a time when I was still trying to determine where I should end up. So I started off with the development focus, began with a degree in history, bachelor's degree, and then a joint degree in the business school, Marriott School, and also here in the Kennedy Center in their international development master's programs. Let me go through a couple of the experiences that I had. First, I'll never forget meeting Dave, and I said, I'm going to go do this. Is there any way that your office would be interested in supporting me, or can I get credits for what I'm doing? And the answer was yes, actually, to both of those questions that I had. If you are wondering, I would love to go abroad, but I simply don't have money to do this. I can tell you that there are many avenues, both here on campus through either like-minded professors who are willing to work with you as mentors, or individual opportunities for students to receive your own scholarships and opportunities to go abroad. So this was comforting for me to know. Also, it did not take long, and a few people became aware of this project, and there were a couple of deans on campus who made some scholarships available to make the field studies a reality, and also the eventual publication. As a missionary to Kiribati, one of the struggles that I had, and this was Kiribati is a non-MTC language, so it was a struggle to attempt to learn the local language and thereby teach the gospel in that language. One of the things I wanted to do was to go back and help produce a non-existent Kiribati English dictionary and also an English Kiribati dictionary. So I had the opportunity from 1995 to 1997 to help develop this, was mentored through several faculty members here on campus, some distinguished, the linguistics former chair, John Robertson, was an outstanding mentor to me, provided me with the skills, linguistics background that I needed, and developed some very close friendships that remain today from this initial project. And that was one of the most rewarding things to me of the International Field Studies experience. The dictionary, I should mention, after publication, it was published here at BYU, has since been used by the Peace Corps as well in developing their Kiribati English language programs and training, and also, of course, the missionaries of the church who go there and serve now. A second, and you'll notice the topic here, the latitude for both individual and group field study projects. You can go either as an individual or as a member of a group on one of the renowned programs that exist throughout the earth, different areas of the earth. The first one I mentioned is an individual project. Another individual project that I did, I came back from Kiribati, and Dave Schuler and I sat down, and he invited me to help coordinate some of the field studies in the Pacific region, to which I accepted and was excited to be a part of. And it also offered an opportunity for me to return to this region and conduct research in areas that I was interested in. Because I was a history major in my undergrad studies, I focused a lot of this on ethnographic oral interviewing. The strength of Pacific Island peoples is memory and knowledge preservation through oral histories. Yet it's difficult to have these stories recorded over time, and often time in and of itself will shift the meanings and the actual history. So I had envisioned an opportunity to go and meet with some of the pioneer members of the church in the countries that I was particularly interested in at the time, in and around Fiji. This was a very rewarding opportunity, one of the spiritual highlights of my life to this day. It has since become more of a hobby research project of mine, and I try to involve this in different regions that I'm able to visit of the earth where time permits. But some of the products of this research project over the years were multiple chapters in different books. Also, encyclopedias that were produced by the church. Here's one that talks about the history of the pioneer members in the Pacific Islands. And there are a couple of chapters here. I'll never forget having to expand the histories and meeting many prominent church members through this research project, both here in the United States and abroad. But one of the most rewarding outcomes is a contribution to the church archives in Salt Lake City of many pioneer members in the Pacific Islands who have since passed away, and knowing that had these histories not been conducted, their oral histories would not exist. So it was a very rewarding, in my opinion, individual experience that both my wife Natalie and I participate in different places that we try to visit. I want to go now to the field study groups that I had an opportunity to work with. You can see there were two in particular in this particular geographic region. One was the international student teaching program. So for students who wanted to do their student teaching pre-service training in a foreign setting, this opportunity was available in many of the teaching majors, however, not all. And the countries that were available were 7 that you could choose from. And I believe some, at least, of these countries still remain today. And then the second one Dave gave a precursor on was the Fiji Distance Learning Program. So I'd like to just briefly introduce these two groups, field studies. The drive for this initial project was the late Jim Baird and Dan Anderson from the School of Education, distinguished professors, former dean, one of them at BYU, Hawaii, and president. They wanted to see more involvement with students in foreign settings, and in particular in the unique and strong education focus that the church has traditionally had in the Pacific Islands and in Mexico, the Mormon colonies of northern Mexico. So some student teaching target countries were developed, and these countries included on the list here China, Fiji, Kiribati again, Mexico, New Zealand, Samoa, and Tonga. We had the opportunity to travel to each of these countries multiple times and to participate with hundreds of student teachers over the past 10 plus years in these different destination countries. Natalie, my wife, was also able to do her student teaching during the second year of our marriage in Fiji. So it was a very rewarding experience for us. Some of the products that have come out of this research-wise have been several forthcoming academic journal articles evaluating the successes and struggles of the ISTP program. Let me go now to the Fiji Distance Learning Program. And Professor Ward served as a committee member on my thesis project, which was this, the FDLP. There were several programs that led up to the eventual Perpetual Education Fund. And this was one of the pilot test projects for that great program of the church. And one of the things that I felt was particularly of importance was serving with so many good brothers and sisters who lived in Fiji and other countries, but were not able, because of lack of access to educational opportunities, to obtain a job. And this was a struggle that I knew personally many people who were going through this and wanted to contribute in one way or another to help. So as such, we put together the Fiji Distance Learning Program and approached several different organizations. You can see them here, including, and starting with, I should say, the International Field Studies. David Schuler had his buy-in and support. We then received the director of the Kennedy Center's support, and it went up the chain. But there were other organizations that needed to come on board. First was BYU's Independent Studies, so the director of Independent Study, R. Dwight Laws, joined and offered his generous contribution of the courses, tuition-free to the students for the pilot project. And then we had the church educational system. Ultimately, it had to be approved by the commissioner, the church education system, who then gave his approval. And then we had the involvement of a non-governmental organization called Pro-Literacy Worldwide. At the time, it was Laubach Literacy, which is the largest international literacy organization in the world. And then BYU Hawaii's School of Business wanted to become part of this, and they said, we would like to offer the official business certificate to those participants who successfully complete the program. So this was the nature of the project, and as you can see, some of the projects that I've described are very diverse, span multiple disciplines. This one had a business focus, which I was at the Marriott School at the time, so it was a good fit for my master's thesis. But it also had an international component. So the end product was seeing all of those who graduated from the FDLP either obtain a job for the first time or gain better skills or a better job through the skills they've received, or the opportunity to complete an undergraduate degree and even some into graduate school at this point. So it was very rewarding to see the participation. We had 22 students participate in this through the International Field Studies program, including the renowned scholar who spoke last week, I believe, Curtis Child, if you had the opportunity to listen to his lecture. Sometimes we get caught in the higher education scenario and think, oh goodness, there are just not opportunities for me to go. I'm busy. I'm thinking of getting married. I'm thinking of, I can't afford it. I don't want to add another year to my undergraduate degree. And so we do this opportunity cost scenario in our minds. And this was something that I battled with all of the time. But I can promise you from my experience and also the opportunities that BYU offers through their International Study Programs Office, that there are multiple opportunities that can work with virtually any scenario that students go through. In addition, faculty members at the university struggle with this as well. Can I afford to expand into international settings? What are avenues that I can do this? Will my department support research initiatives? All of these battles are current struggles that faculty members, both at BYU and elsewhere, deal with. But I know that there is strong support through the Kennedy Center from what I have seen over the years for helping faculty members mentor students, work with them, and to get involved. So rather than a vicious cycle that so many people tend to envision, there is a more, well, there's a better way. And you can see that this is one avenue for those who have embarked already and gone abroad, either through personal experience or through an official studies program. Undoubtedly, you will know and have experienced these opportunities. For those who are considering it for the first time, I would very strongly encourage you to take advantage of this unique opportunity. Whether you are single or married or thinking about a mission and weighing these options, I do feel that it's something that can complement rather than contradict or go against the educational experience here at BYU. Also, the learning cycle, each time you go back to a place, is a very powerful experience. Dave Schuler and I have had multiple hours of talking about this particular topic. Each time you go back to a country, each time you look at a specific topic of research that you're interested in, there's a different level or different layer, if you will, of knowledge that we gain, either that's influenced from time or that is added to from the experience and collective knowledge that we gain. Some scholars have referred to this as the elusive Mobius strip analogy, where you can draw a line on one piece of the paper, and eventually, if you just stay on the paper, you'll come back to the exact same point and know the place for the first time, like Mary Catherine Bateson is renowned for stating, or the infinity sign. The learning cycle is not necessarily cyclical in just the traditional circle that we know it. It's more of I would, for lack of a better word or term, I would use the Mobius strip or infinity sign as a more appropriate definition. And this has been something that's helped me, that I always reflect on as I go to a new place for the first time or a place that I've been to for many years. So my experience with BYU's International Field Studies program has been a blessing to my life. And I do not necessarily recommend the track that I took through the different majors for anyone in particular. But I will recommend strongly the experience to couple your education with an international opportunity. Find a faculty member here at BYU who you would like to, who's doing something of interest to you that you share interests in, and work with that person. You can do directed research individually, your project, or you can join the bandwagon of an existing renowned program such as is offered at the International Study Programs Office. Many opportunities will come to you if you seek that. And I can also tell you this, that when you go for a job interview, in the end product or the end goal of where you would like to work, you will stand out in those who are being interviewed. It will not be a red flag in the negative connotation, but it will be a flag that will stand out largely in a positive manner, that you've had experience in diverse settings and in diverse contexts. And since graduating from BYU, I then went to UCLA and was still involved in some different levels with either directing or researching with field studies and the former volunteer programs that they had. A lot of this work was in both Africa and the Pacific Islands. My work in Africa involved primarily HIV/AIDS education programs, and also these received funding from a multiple group of organizations, including pharmaceutical companies who are interested in HIV/AIDS issues, the World Bank, UNESCO, USAID, and others, such as pro-literacy, as I had already mentioned. Right now, I'm directing the Institute for International Studies in Education at the University of Pittsburgh. And it's a fantastic program that is grants-based. And I am trying to build and to incorporate similar models that I have learned from Brigham Young University's International Study Programs Office. So we're developing a similar type model of the field studies and internship opportunities. I think it's a strong and robust model. It's one that's grounded in research. It's one that is grounded in career development. It is also one that is grounded in service learning. And for these three reasons, complementary reasons, I would like to push this as one of the major initiatives in our new institute, or the institute that I have just been hired to direct. In conclusion, I wanted to mention also that those who participate in the international field studies programs join a large family of international scholars, researchers, and I keep in touch over the years. I see Malcolm, who just walked in recently, some better than others, but great friends who we've either participated on projects with internationally or together here and before we've gone abroad in our different locations. And these networks are very powerful and lasting throughout the career development process. I'd like to open up some time now if there are any questions or comments that you have.
This isn't like a super deep question. I'm just curious, at the university that you're working with now, is this a graduate program? Is it an undergraduate program? And are you sending students internationally? You mentioned what you were doing, but are students, conducting research under professor mentorship? What's going on?
Yeah, great question. And maybe if everyone could also introduce their name just for my benefit, because I unfortunately don't know everyone in the room.
My name's Kaisa Berlin, and I did my field research in Tonga, but I've spent other times, I've been there twice, and my family's all connected to the islands, so interested in what you have to say. Yeah, well, Tonga is a great country, first of all, and I love the friendly islands, if you will. Great place. Yes, students are involved in every project that we have. We have multiple projects. We have a very large 5-year project in Indonesia right now. So virtually all of the students in our department and associated with the Institute have participated at one level or another, both domestically here at the University of Pittsburgh, when we have participants come from Indonesia, and also when we go to Indonesia. So yes, the answer is we're working on some HIV/AIDS capacity building and prevention initiatives right now in East Asia and Africa. And I have multiple students working directly with me on grants that I have received that help fund these projects. And together we are able to publish, research, and help change education systems, if you will, and multi-sectoral organizations or every sector in different countries. The two target countries that we are working with HIV in Africa are Sudan and Uganda. But I've worked in 17 different African countries on HIV in particular, most of them with one level or another of student involvement. Yeah, and multiple publication opportunities, eventual jobs in organizations we've worked with, for instance, have derived from this student faculty mentorship partnership. Yeah, great question. Thank you.
My name's Eric Darso. Dave Schuler often talks about the trend in the field of international studies programs as being increasingly expensive and increasingly short. And I'm wondering if you could sort of address that trend and why you think that's happening and if you think there's a reversal. coming?
Okay, yeah, it's a good point. The short, if you will, stint in a foreign country, 2 weeks to maybe a small term experience where you can receive credits, this is a very common scenario that you will see. It's difficult to say that a person has obtained the depth and level of expertise that is required on any given country or context with such short exposure to those contexts. But with the increase in certain areas such as airfare and other costs, in some places living costs, like Sudan, I spent the summer in Sudan, and it costs more in Juba, Sudan, to live than it does in Manhattan. Here it is, probably the most war-ravaged nation I am aware of on the earth. But there is simply no infrastructure to get a place to live, which was a tent for me a lot of the times. It was very costly. So you're right, there are some scenarios, even in developing country contexts, that are increasing and costly. But I do think that on a shoestring budget for students, there are avenues to receive and obtain scholarships, to join a current faculty member's grant. So you may want to work with a faculty member who has funding, but I wouldn't limit it at that, because often you can go with a faculty member and receive funding of your own and receive your own grant. Or there are many opportunities for fellowships as well. So I would say yes, but there are also opportunities. And this is one of the reasons I put up this cycle, because it is daunting to look at these costs. If you are just newly married and you can't even live in Provo and make the bills, I went through this experience. How could you ever go abroad and conduct your master's thesis abroad? This is a real issue for a lot of people. But I can promise you that somehow there are ways that will open if you're persistent and if you're serious about it. So that's my personal vision of it. Others may not be as optimistic. I think Dave has a lot of experience in counseling students with all of the thousands he's dealt with over the years. So there's some value in that statement. But I would also offer the opportunistic and an alternative perspective to that. Eric, that's my opinion. Yeah.
James, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
What's your view on, or what's, from your years of experience, the best way to prepare students, prepare yourself to going abroad and working in these type of projects and research?
Yeah, there's no one cookie-cutter model for this question, but certainly there are some things that can help. And to get started early, the summer is upon us before you know it, and summer is often the peak time for a lot of these experiences to go abroad. It's an opportunistic time for a lot of students. But in order to be successful on May 1st and to have your grant and your funds allocated and ready, don't do what I did in my first experience. I walked into Dave Schuler's office before the Kiribati dictionary venture, returning to my mission, 1 week before I was leaving. It just so happened that I needed to get my temple recommend renewed, and one of the stake president of the stake that I was in, who interviewed me, asked me what I was doing over the summer, and I said, well, I need to get this renewed before it expires in the summer. And he was the dean of the School of Family, Home, and Social Sciences, Clayton Pope, if you know Professor Pope. And he said, well, we had some horrendous applications for research this year, and we have a pot of funds available, and we would like to fund this. So I can tell you there's not always one scenario, but I would not recommend waiting until the last minute because you simply will not have it.
But if you start, say, in September, in October, certainly by December, to meet the ORCA scholarship deadlines, to meet the business deadlines, I mean, you can tweak a research project so that it can fit into the realm of entrepreneurship, into the realm of education. There are multiple scholarships offered here. So in preparation, I'm focusing a lot on finances, but it's kind of going back to Eric's question. Opportunities are there, but you need to be proactive and take that initiative early. The second is cultural and contextual preparation. Very important component. I know that there are preparation courses that have been developed over the years prior to large group studies going abroad. This is fantastic. It was not always the case. In the late 90s, these were starting to be developed. They were recommended but not required. Now I believe they are required for participation. At least I understand this to be. Is that right, Ashley? So these are some pluses that have helped, I think, to offset some of the potential catastrophes that can help or happen in multicultural settings, either through offending someone in Tonga by saying, you know, I don't like the way you cook this fish, or just some things to show a general appreciation and diversity recognition. This cannot be overemphasized, especially in a student internship opportunity. And by the way, I should mention I love the way the Pacific Islanders cook fish, and even don't cook fish. So I hope that helps.
I'm just curious, what kind of challenges have you faced with your international work in like different cultural maybe boundaries that you've come up to trying to launch certain educational programs? I would imagine dealing with indigenous culture, you'd come up with that, and they'd have a thing to say, their opinions about what you're trying to do. You know, how do you overcome that communication boundary, maybe?
You take Carol Ward's ethnography course or Intro to Qualitative Research, and that will be a precursor to offsetting a lot of the cultural problems. But very good question. And one of the things that exists now for good reasons, but did not exist in even the late 1990s, or at least the emphasis and requirement for approval, is this institutional review board. So another part of getting started early, Malcolm, kind of going back, is it takes sometimes months to get approval. Many studies are expedited and can be overcome, or approved, I should say, within a couple of weeks. But if you have a topic such as HIV/AIDS, and I work with children in different countries, and you're going to sample randomly a nation, like the nation of Uganda, a study that we did here, then you have to have institutional review board. One of the obstacles we came across in 2002 with the International Volunteers Program study was we had full approval from UCLA, where I was, and then BYU. Well, we get there, and the Ministry of Education was supporting this study, and we had full governmental support, but the European Union had a particularly strong resistance to this particular study, and mostly because they had assumed that aligned with any U.S. research project, be it UCLA, BYU, or another university, advocates certain prevention methods among children in Uganda. And in particular, they were interested in what our study would entail regarding condom usage and promotion in this study that we were conducting. So it was an unforeseen, unexpected, several-month process to get approval from the European Union, who held the purse strings. Yes, it's a multilateral organization, but in many ways works as a bilateral because it funded a lot of the programs of Uganda's government. And they had to, and they sat on the Ministry of Education's internal review board.
and had to give their stamp of approval as well. So it took multiple discussions and convincing and revisiting some of these issues with different types of stakeholders in different countries. So great question. Then there are other obstacles that happen. We had one student who fell and broke her jaw. Catastrophe. She simply slid on a path that was graveled and fell down, and it happened to break her jaw. This was also in Uganda, and we felt terrible. What do you do in these medical situations, crises, and what do you not do? One thing I did not want to do was to have the operation occur in Uganda at the time with my understanding of the Ugandan medical situation there. So we were able to deal with this situation. What do you do with potential issues of rape, of domestic violence in an international setting? Always a concern of ours. We use the buddy system. You cannot go anywhere without bringing a buddy with you. So there are things that you can do to offset potential crises. Robberies, it just depends. If you're in Senegal, I was mugged many times in my experience in Dakar. Compared to other countries like Fiji, you're only robbed once a year type thing. So it just depends on the situation, but you want to try and offset these unforeseen crises or challenges and obstacles, and do everything you can to put safety as the highest priority of your students. Or if you are a student, that should be a #1 priority.